We have warned you that Donald Trump would use the full force of the federal government to target his perceived political enemies. Well, now he's doing it via executive order. Welcome back to Democracy Docket. I'm Marc Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started.
You know, Paige, you and I have been talking for months now about the fact that it was inevitable that Donald Trump would eventually weaponize every aspect of the federal government to go after his political opponents and his perceived enemies. We saw him start by targeting institutions like law firms, universities, even some private businesses. And now we have seen him use executive orders to target individuals for investigation and for being targeted by the federal government in ways that would have been unimaginable in prior administrations.
Recently, Trump issued 2 executive orders targeting his own former officials from his first term in office. He targeted Chris Krebs, who was the head of CISA during his first term. Now, Krebs' so-called crime was that he publicly dispelled claims of voter fraud and conspiracy theories around voting machines and mail-in ballots during the 2020 election. Trump also targeted Miles Taylor, a former senior Department of Homeland Security official who, during the first Trump administration, wrote an anonymous op-ed and later a book kind of chronicling the chaos in the Trump administration and outlining the damage that Trump was doing to our country.
Yeah, and I want to really focus in on Krebs, not that they're not both worthy, but as you say, Krebs's sole offense in the eyes of Donald Trump was that he said the election in 2020 was not rigged, which, by the way, was Krebs's job. He was actually put in the position by Donald Trump to head this agency that looks for foreign interference and sort of malfeasance in connection with elections. So, like, his job was to offer this opinion. And he offered the opinion that he had, which, by the way, corresponds with the opinion that almost everyone else had, and certainly everyone who is responsible in government and people on the outside and state officials. It's the opinion they all had. And yet here we are in 2025, you know, and Donald Trump hasn't forgotten that Chris Krebs did this. And he is now not just stripping him of his security clearance, which in and of itself would be, in my view, wrong and a violation of the law. He's not just, you know, doing the usual garbage about no government contracts or whatever else that he does with law firms and the like. But he's actually like saying this guy individually should be investigated. I mean, Paige, I don't know what you think, but this just feels like we're not just crossing a line. We have like hop, skipped, and jumped across the line.
Right. And I think to your point, it's really interesting because Chris Krebs, that's not really a name you know unless you're really into election security and infrastructure. Like we said, he headed up CISA. And Marc, we should talk in a bit more about how the Trump administration has dismantled CISA
Right.
and the work it does to protect our elections from foreign interference. Like, this is one guy who is in charge of one federal agency that really works closely with state officials. It's well known to secretaries of states, but it's not a huge public facing part of the federal government. Yet Trump is spending his time targeting this one guy. Trump went as far to say that Krebs violated the First Amendment and eroded trust in the federal government by speaking out against 2020 voter fraud claims and telling the truth, which is really scary and frightening to think of in the context of you now have a president targeting someone for sharing information and their own opinion about what the federal government was doing.
Yeah, really, by the way, puts the First Amendment on its head, right? I mean, he's saying that Chris Krebs violated the First Amendment or undermined it somehow by actually speaking. Right? Like, I mean, the sort of authoritarian playbook in full force here, in like full display, that he is saying that because Chris Krebs told the truth and spoke out, he is somehow undermining the confidence in the elections. I mean, it's the complete opposite of what the truth is, right? It is Donald Trump who has constantly tried to undermine confidence in the elections. It is Donald Trump who has tried to sow discord and misinformation about what happened in 2020 so that he can explain why he lost, but also so that he can discredit his opponents in the future, and he can discredit elections and election results he doesn't like in the future. But, Paige, you made a very important point that, this agency that Chris Krebs was in charge of, he plays a vital role. State officials rely on this agency to keep our elections safe. People don't realize, but our elections in this country are not actually run by the federal government. They're run by the states and by localities. And the federal government, though, plays an important supporting role there. And we've seen the Trump administration target this agency for budget cuts and defunding for 2026, right? Like long after Chris Krebs is gone, Donald Trump is still targeting this agency, which will leave our elections less secure, less protected, more hackable, more exposed to foreign interference. And so, though it is a complete outrage that he is targeting this one individual, it is important to understand that this is still part of a larger effort on his part, supported by the Republican Party, to discredit our elections, to undermine our elections, to try to take over our elections. You and I have done videos about that for Democracy Docket. And by the way, if you are not already, please click on the link above, become a Democracy Docket subscriber or paying member. It is well worth your time to stay up to date on everything happening to democracy in court. And there is no better source than Democracy Docket. Also, click on the little subscribe button in YouTube if you're not already a subscriber, and get notifications when Paige and I make these videos.
Marc, to give a bit of more information about CISA, because like we said, it's not super well known. This is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It works very closely with state election officials. It provides training and information. And really, part of their portfolio is keeping our elections safe from foreign interference. Now, when the Trump administration announced federal funding cuts to CISA, our reporters spoke with a variety of election officials, including Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, who described these cuts to CISA as almost catastrophic. He said that CISA is really one of the only programs that every single state has access to that keeps our elections safe. Now, Fontes and other local election officials are working to provide a new replacement for CISA, creating a third-party organization that can replicate much of the work that CISA does. But Marc, at the end of the day, protecting our elections should be a cornerstone of the federal government. They should be protecting our elections from voter suppression, from misinformation, and yes, foreign election interference. And the Trump administration is kind of chopping down every single safeguard the federal government does to really meaningfully protect our elections, and instead it is replacing it with Republican fantasies about non-citizen voting and people and dead people voting and people voting twice, things that don't happen, but then also taking a chainsaw to everything that we actually have that does protect our elections.
So I said I wanted to start with Chris Krebs because it really ties together so many of the things you and I have talked about over time. The increased weaponization of government, the targeting of an individual, the undermining of elections, the continued of the big lie of 2020. But we should say a word about Miles Taylor. He was a political appointee within DHS in the first Trump administration. And during that time, he wrote an anonymous op-ed and a book that described the chaos in the Trump administration. I think the article was something like, "I'm part of the resistance inside the Trump administration." And it got a lot of attention at the time. And, he is kind of your classic whistleblower. Clearly, no president likes the fact that there are people who write books or op-eds about their presidency. I'm sure Joe Biden didn't like it. I'm sure Barack Obama probably even had some books that he wished hadn't been written, and certainly every president before him. But Donald Trump is taking this to a whole new level and demonstrating his authoritarian impulses, which is rather than just let a book that he doesn't like, pass by. After all, at this point, the book has been written. It's been public for some number of years now. He is doubling back to Miles Taylor and also having the AG and other parts of the federal government investigate him. And Paige, it's hard to see this as anything other than as a warning shot aimed at other people who serve in this White House or in this administration, saying, if you talk to the press, if you write op-eds, if you write books, we will come after you.
Right. There's no other way you can take it. Now, Miles Taylor was a Republican. He started working during the Bush administration. He worked for House Speaker Paul Ryan before joining the Trump administration. Like, he was a through and through Republican who was really just saying, hey, this administration isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. Here are things that I've seen and heard that are completely out of line, if not illegal, with how the government is supposed to work. And there's no other way to take it than as a warning that if you speak the truth, if you try to hold the Trump administration accountable, Donald Trump will turn the power of the federal government against you. He has ordered Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate and issue recommendations about any further action the executive branch can take. That's one guy against the weight of the federal government, again, whose only alleged crime was speaking out and speaking his truth.
Yeah. And look, I just want everyone who's listening to this to understand, you may not know who Chris Krebs is. You may not much care about who Miles Taylor is, but you need to care about this. And here's why. Right now, we are watching as individuals are being renditioned from the United States into an El Salvadorian terror prison. And Donald Trump is doing that because he is assuming that when he does that to an individual in Maryland or a group of individuals held in Louisiana, no one will speak up. He is going after Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs because he is hoping that no one will speak up, right? He is not starting by targeting hundreds of thousands or millions of immigrants. And he's not starting by going after the most high profile political opponents, but he'll eventually get there. Piece by piece, step by step. And at each stage, he is counting on you to say, well, it's not really that much different than the thing before. And you know what? He'll be right. It isn't that much different than the thing before. So if you would be outraged that he decided to indict Liz Cheney or go after Hillary Clinton, then you need to be outraged that he is going after Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor. In the same way that if you would be outraged that he would take 100,000 US-born American citizens who were political opponents of his and ship them to a foreign country to serve in a desolate prison, then you need to be concerned that he is doing that now to individuals who you do not know and whose story you may not be able to directly relate to. So that's why we do these episodes over and over again, Paige and I, because we're trying to bring to you the real life facts that are taking place and how each one of these alone is an outrage, but collectively they are a tragedy. And it's why I started Democracy Docket in 2020 to chronicle this and to give you a place to get that information. But we rely on you and your support to be able to do the work that Democracy Docket does, to be able to make these videos, to be able to put out a website entirely composed of free content, to be able to put out a daily and weekly newsletter that summarizes the news of the day and the news of the week entirely for free. And if you can't afford to subscribe to one more thing right now, I get it. Please sign up for those free newsletters. But if you can support the work that Paige and the Democracy Docket team do, please become a premium member. You'll get some additional content, you'll get access to some additional events, and you'll be making sure that it has the resources to continue to shine a light on what Donald Trump is doing day after day. Thanks for joining and watching this episode of Democracy Docket. We'll see you next time.